Hey! Get down, get down, get down! Alright! Colin! Moving left! Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Stage Dynamics.
Colin Evans, 556 Tactical.
And today we're taking a look at a contextual drill of drawing from a seated position, most likely in reference to being around other people, and muzzle safety and how you would do that. Gun. Down, 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 down!
Yeah, we kind of got this idea. Well, I'm sure it has been done. It's probably in YouTube land somewhere. We had a big group of our guys out here with us earlier, and we actually frequently go out to dinner quite a bit together. And the idea said, you know what if something happens in a restaurant and we're all together? What's the direction? What's going to change? What do we need to do, or what do we need to be conscientious of, especially with other people around? So we decided to do a eating, greeting, shooting match.
Gun. Get out! Now, when we talk about drawing from a seated position, the most common one is going to be your vehicle. Probably that's the one a lot of people have thought about. You can stage your holster. You can, if you're carrying concealed, you can pull your shirt and tuck it behind the gun so you have ease of access, or you could have an in-vehicle holster. Now, when we look at restaurants or certain situations like that, just seated at a table, I think the worst case scenario would probably be a picnic table style seating like you'd see at a barbecue restaurant or something like that, especially if you're seated in the middle and you've got someone on your left to your right and you've got people directly across from you. Because on the draw, even if you can safely draw the weapon and not muzzle the person to the left or the right, you still have people directly across from you. If the threat's approaching from behind them, you may not have time to cue them into the fact that they need to get out of the way. So you might have to reach across the table and physically part them and actually push your weapon past them, as we're going to take a look at. So if I'm seated at a table and the threat presents from the camera's view, from the viewer's view, and I have two people sitting directly across from me, what are some of my options for drawing the handgun? Appendix carry or hip carry doesn't really factor into it. However, appendix carry might be a little bit easier for this situation. I basically have to unconceal my weapon, make my draw. Now, as the weapon comes up, I need to make sure I don't muzzle him. I need to make sure I don't muzzle them. Now, I don't have time necessarily to cue them into the fact that there's a threat behind them, and even if I say threat or something like that, I've got that code word worked out, I can't depend on them not to get in my way when they follow that natural human tendency to look. So I pretty much have to cue them into the fact that something's going on after I've safely drawn the weapon, and now, you know, they're gonna see the gun and know something's going on, but I'm gonna have to move quickly so they don't get into my path. Now, I gotta clear them out of my way. I got to push the gun past them as safely as possible and engage the threat. I want a clear draw path right between them as I bring the muzzle up to confront the threat. So I'm going to come straight across, pull him down, and press the gun straight past and engage my threat. Now, if he does something unpredictable and places himself in the way, or he does something unpredictable and places himself in the way in the muzzle, I have to work through that. Best case scenario, especially if you eat and travel and spend time with people you normally train with, you can kind of pre-rehearse this, so in the event that it actually does happen, they know what's going on, they know how to safely stay out of the way of the path of the gun. But it's just as simple as that. Straight up, pull him out of the way, and engage. Now, do I want to have my gunfight from this seated position? Absolutely not. If I was seated in a chair, it would be much easier for me to take those first initial shots to get the threat and then literally just step out of the way and move. Since I'm seated at a picnic table, it makes things a little more complicated because I have to step over the table to work around it. But it's still totally doable, as we're going to see. So I've drawn my weapon, I've put him down, I've engaged my threat. Now I have to move. What's the safest way for me to do it without muzzling the people seated at my table or other people necessarily in the restaurant? When it comes to muzzle safety, you point the weapon in the safest direction possible. One of the more controversial positions, holding positions that have come up recently, but which is strange because this particular technique has existed for a very, very long time, is what's become known as temple index or high port. I'm simply going to bring the gun straight up, index off the side of my head, and now I can move from the table freely around past the threats and continue to engage the bad guy. Threat! Good! Now, just like everything else we do, there is no textbook technique that's going to be able to be applied to any situation you may find yourself in. I mentioned temple index, where we can bring the gun up. Makes a lot of sense in the context of a very full room, but if you can get your muzzle down, it's just as safe. As long as you make sure you're not muzzling yourself or you're not muzzling those you pass by or around you. And I also think in a restaurant situation, you may have small children around, so a muzzle down technique may not make as much sense if you've got people moving around with small kids. It's a high stress situation, and the possibility of a negligent discharge is always there, especially under stress, especially if it's your first time in a real life stress shooting situation. That's just something to be aware of. There are multiple different techniques you can use for muzzle safety, but with this drill, really the thing you have to stress the most when practicing and training this one is making sure the muzzle is safe and making sure you push the muzzle past anyone you have to engage by. This is a drill you can run if you have the ability, you have a range available to you where you can come out and set up a card table, a few folding chairs, or bring one of the, the cheaper plastic picnic tables to use. But this is definitely a drill to practice. If you do not have the ability to practice this in your live or your indoor range settings, find a place where you can do drills like this and others. The more realistic, the better. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly. Wander through the background if you want. I don't care. I've done that before too. Like, guys been like,
It was amazing.
right!
Good! Reloading!
America.